Yes, John, a very special guest in studio with us today, Alison, Lukan, and General Manager Ron Francis, kind enough to join us here at the Kraken Hockey Network studios right after trade deadline came and went on Friday, in a very busy time for the Kraken and teams throughout the National Hockey League. Ron, let's start first with the guys leaving Seattle, and all three had a major impact in what the Kraken, who and what they are over the years, and we see here Oliver Bjorkstrand, Yanni Gourde, Daniel Sprong also going as well, and of course Brandon Tanev. And you've been doing this for a long time, and I know it's never easy to tell guys they're moving on, especially guys that had such a great impact on the organization.
Yeah, no, we certainly appreciate everything those guys did for our organization, and you know, Yanni and Oliver, the first who had to make the calls on, very tough making those calls. You know, Yanni, when he came in to grab his stuff, was nice enough to pop by the office. We sat and had a nice chat, so that was good. I had a chance to thank him and, you know, Marie and their family for everything they've done for the organization on and off the ice. Same thing with Oliver and you know, Brandon as well. And then, you know, Daniel wasn't with us at the time, but ended up making that call, and it was good for him to get out of the American Hockey League and get a chance again at the NHL.
And Ron, you make those trades and arguably in some ways helped set the market for what was to come, but get a couple first-round picks back. You've talked already about how that's not necessarily picks that you're looking to hold to use just for drafting purposes. How do you use all the currency you amassed?
Yeah, I mean, there's different ways to accumulate players, right? One is to draft and develop, one is to trade for them, one is the free agent market, and one is offer sheets. So now by moving some of these contracts out, we've created probably, you know, around $20 million or more of cap space going into the off season for free agency and potential trades. We've also now created the opportunity with 10, you know, first and second round picks in the next 3 drafts to have draft capital to use in that situation as well. So a lot of things that we're looking to do. This is not something we're just trying to cut salary. This is something that we're trying to make space to try and improve our team in the offseason.
And one thing that caught my eye is a lot of times people think, oh, you're getting a draft pick for this coming summer. These go out farther. Does that afford you more negotiating ability and more value for those picks because you have more of a runway?
Absolutely, yeah. If we did them all this year and we couldn't get things done, then we have to take those players. And you know, we feel that we've accumulated a lot of good players and prospects in the last few years that are in our pipeline that are working towards getting to the NHL for us. So by putting them out a little bit, that does give us a little bit of a cushion to try and make these deals to improve our team moving forward.
Yeah, and Ron, as we saw in the graphics, you can see right there, I mean, all those assets, all of those picks that Alison referred to, and all the things that you have to work with this summer. I want to take a step back because in sports fans use the term all the time. I rarely hear it from general managers, owners, coaches. The dreaded 7-letter word rebuild. You hear that all the time. Rebuild, rebuild, rebuild. The local NFL team, people think they're doing that right now. They'll never say that. I don't think that's what their plan is. And I don't think that's what your plan is either. So you have a core. Maybe you can kind of just let the fans know what the long-term plan is, because it's short-term win, long-term develop, but at the same time, you're not starting from scratch. You're not starting over in year 5.
No, this has been a rebuild in a sense from day one, right? We're trying to get NHL players to be competitive. We're also trying to draft and develop our young talent. You know, you look at our center position, just take a good example. You got Maddie, who just turned 22, and Shane, who just turned 21. It's very young to be your top 3 centermen in the National Hockey League. So when you look at that compared to some of the other teams that have been in that position the last few years, you know, Edmonton, Washington, to name a few, you know, it takes a little bit of time for these guys, but we're already well down the path on sort of having that position solidified and moving forward. You look at what we have in the pipeline already. You know, you got to see Melanson the other night. There's a good chance you'll see Yanni Neiman before the end of the season, and what he's doing in the American League is pretty special. So we're excited to give him a look. You look at our players in junior hockey. I mean, Berkeley Catton's having an unbelievable season. So he's forcing our hands to take a look at him next year as well, too. So this is not a rebuild. We think we've got a lot of pieces in place. We think we're a lot closer than maybe some other people think we are. And with the assets now in the cap space, we think we can push that along hopefully a little quicker.
And along those lines, it's not cost-cutting either. I mean, yes, there's some veterans that are gone. It's not like other sports. Major League Baseball doesn't have a salary cap, so they might cut costs when you let go of players. In hockey, with a salary cap, a hard cap, you're not cutting costs. You're just planning for the summer months.
Absolutely. From day one, our owners have been fantastic in that regard. The facilities they provided our players, the way they treat our players and their families, the way they want to give back to our fans in the city of Seattle is very impressive to me. So you look at where we started last year, I think we had $3,800 worth of cap space. That's not saving money. That's not cutting back. That is trying to get the most out of your team. And all it's afforded us by making these moves is now it's freed up about $20 million in cap space that we can now look to retool over the course of the summer. We certainly plan to be, right near the cap again next season. So this is not a cost-cutting measure in any way, shape, or form. This is taking a step to try and help move us forward, like I said, in the offseason.
And Ron, you mentioned some of the younger players who are now becoming part of the core and who we might still see. With where the team is at, we might see some of those faces the rest of the season. Help fans understand we're not necessarily looking for them to be NHL ready. What do you want the fans to understand, and what are the players' experience versus having them in Coachella if they're there and being ready for that playoff push?
Yeah, so a couple things factor into that. Once you get to the deadline, you're allowed 4 recalls post-deadline. We, in theory, not in theory, we have used 2 on John Hayden and Cale Fleury. What we do is we call them up and we, as we say, flush them and then recall them. That allows them to go down at the end of the season and play in the playoffs for Coachella. But in the meantime, they're with us. So we now have 2 recalls left. If we're in a position where with 12 forwards and 6 defensemen, we go below that 12 or 6, then we're in what's called an emergency situation. We can call somebody up without burning a recall. So between now and the end of the season, unfortunately, we will have some injuries. So I think we can afford multiple guys an opportunity to come up and take a look at what they can do. We're not sitting here saying, hey, they're ready right now. We're trying to evaluate whether we think they can step into our lineup when training camp starts next September and the season in October. So we look at what they do in the American Hockey League. We look at what they do in junior. We look at what they're doing in Europe. And now we want to get a look at them at the NHL level. It's a bigger step, but we want to just give them a taste and see where they're at and see if we're comfortable enough saying, hey, this guy can play in our lineup next year.
Yanni Newman's the guy you just mentioned a second ago. And for fans maybe who aren't familiar with it, maybe they're not following Coachella Valley, we've talked a little bit about Jeff Tambellini about him, but what do you see in this young man?
Well, this guy last year broke a record that stood for 40 years in the Liga being the top league in Finland for the most goals scored by a player 20 and under. He's continued it this year in Coachella Valley. He's now #1 in the American Hockey League for rookie goal scoring with 26. I think he's 4th in rookie scoring overall with points, and I think he's 4th or 5th in the league for goal scoring. He is a big guy. He's got a heck of a shot, and he can score in a lot of different ways. He can score from a distance because the shot is so good, but he can also get to the front of the net for rebounds and deflections. So we're excited to see what he can do for us.
Another face that isn't a younger player but came in via trade is AC Mont, that comes in, plays on that 4th line, hasn't even had a practice yet, but what have you seen from him, and what is your evaluation process with him right now?
Yeah, so he's what we term an unrestricted free agent. So if we don't sign him before July 1st, he's a free agent. But I know in our January meetings, he was the guy that was kind of on the radar of our scouts, the guy that, as we like to say in hockey, kind of a greasy type player. He goes to the hard areas, competes hard battles. I guess similar in a lot of ways the way Yanni would play that game. So, it's only been 2 games, but I think Mikey's done a nice job. We'll continue to watch him here as we get towards the end of the season and make a decision after the season.
A player that many around here have probably seen play in person, whether it be in Everett or in Kent, or we have a lot of viewers. We're on over the Kraken Hockey Network in Spokane. You mentioned Berkeley Catton, last year's #1 pick, having an unreal year, over 100 points already in the Western Hockey League, and he missed a couple weeks with a little thing called the World Juniors. Is this a player that maybe could push for a spot in the lineup next year?
Yeah, absolutely. Based on what he's done, I really liked his World Junior tournament. That's the best players in his age group, and he didn't rack up the points maybe, but I thought his play was good and the opportunities were there. I think he had an 18-game streak with points in the Western Hockey League. He had 32 points in a 10-game stretch. I love his IQ, his skill set, the way he sees the ice, his vision and passing ability, and Jeff and his staff are continuing to work with Berkeley, continue to work with him off ice as the season goes along to try and get him ready. It'll be a big summer for him as well, but based on what he's done, I would expect him to get the minimum 9 games before we have to make a decision on whether we keep him or send him back next year.
Ron, we appreciate you coming in. Your team kind of rebounded nicely. All the weight off the shoulders yesterday. You saw that in Philadelphia. It was a really nice performance.
Yeah, I know. I mean, listen, I made it harder for our team to win down the stretch by doing what I did, but our guys are pros and they continue to work hard. So yes, it was a good example of that. Hopefully we can keep that going.